The first pure science fiction book was Frankenstein, the Modern Prometheus by Mary Shelley, which was published in 1818. The tale served as the model for innumerable theatre and cinema adaptations after being published decades before its time. A living, breathing, horrifying result of scientific discovery is Frankenstein. The video poses a significant, all-encompassing issue about the nature of innovation. Should something be done only because it is possible? Swiss scientist Victor Frankenstein is on a mission to build an artificial person. He makes progress without taking the negative effects of it into account, and the results are terrible. The monster eventually hunts for Frankenstein's family after traversing the Earth alone. Terrible things happen before the doctor reluctantly decides to breed the beast. In the end, the doctor declines in an effort to save humanity, but he suffers the horrific and individual consequences of his choice. Frankenstein still raises numerous important ethical issues 200 years later. The story is like this. Robert Walton describes how his polar expedition gets stuck in ice and how one day he sees a gigantic figure in the distance in a series of letters to his sister Margaret Saville. The following day, Victor Frankenstein, a mystery stranger, joins him. Victor assumes over of the narrative and proceeds to narrate Walton a convoluted yarn about his life story and how he ended up by himself so close to the North Pole. Victor Frankenstein's childhood in Switzerland is secure because he has two younger brothers, Alphonse, and loving parents, Ernest and William. Elizabeth Lavenza, a little orphan girl, is given a home by Victor's generous mother, and he develops a special bond with her. Victor exhibits a curious disposition and is especially interested in anything scientific. Mother of Victor becomes ill and dies. Her final wish is that Victor and Elizabeth will Wednesday. Victor studies in Germany at the University of Ingolstadt, where he develops an interest in the origins of life. He pursues his goal of creating and bringing to life a man for 2 years. He neglects his friends and family throughout this time and becomes ill as a result. Victor aspires to create a flawless human, but the enormous creature he creates is actually composed of fragments of numerous bodies he has stolen from cemeteries and mortuaries. Victor eventually succeeds in bringing this creature to life, but when he sees just how terrible it is, he decides to give up on it, believing it will perish naturally from neglect. Henry Clerval, Victor's best friend, tends to him as he becomes increasingly ill. The two fly to Italy together. They learn that William, Victor's little brother, the youngest Frankenstein, has sadly died just as they are ready to head back to Victor's house. Justine Moritz, a dependable employee of the Frankenstein family, has been held accountable, but Victor witnesses his creation next to the crime scene being illuminated by lightning. Although he is aware of the reality of William's passing, he also understands that no one will accept his incredible tale. William and Justine are the first to succumb to Victor's desire after the innocent Justine is tried and executed. A guilty Victor ventures out by himself into the Swiss highlands where he eventually runs across the monster. He is taken aback to learn that his creation not only survived, but also possesses the power of language. The monster goes on at length about how he has been living covertly next to the de Lacy family in an outbuilding, learning not just the language they were teaching a foreign visitor, but also other things like history, geography, religion, and culture. He pays the family back by performing several of their domestic duties covertly. He abruptly reveals himself to the family, but they are so scared by him that he flees once more. He receives comparable treatment from everyone he meets and becomes lonely and isolated. In exchange for providing Victor with a female companion to be his lifelong spouse, the monster requires him to acknowledge that he is to blame for his isolation and sorrow. Victor agrees in a last-ditch effort to prevent the monster's retaliation from harming the rest of his family. Victor takes Henry with him on a trip to Britain without explaining why. Victor departs for the isolated Orkney Islands to fulfill his promise to make the monster a companion after the two part ways. Even after starting the project, he abruptly realizes the results of his actions and destroys his creation. The monster, who has been pursuing Victor the entire time, is enraged. He vows to return the evening Victor is married. Henry is killed by the monster out of rage and retaliation. Victor returns to Switzerland and Elizabeth inconsolable. After getting married, they depart on their honeymoon. Victor believes that tonight is the night when the monster would kill him since he remembers the monster's threat, but the monster really kills Elizabeth. Victor's father passes away heartbroken after learning what has happened. Victor experiences a mental collapse. When he gets well, he tells a magistrate what happened, but nothing is done about it. Victor decides to go after the monster after acknowledging that he must solve the issue on his own. He pursues it all the way across Europe before landing in the Arctic, where Walton found him on the ice. Walton recounts the story in his sister's letters once more. He describes to her how Victor eventually passes away from weariness and exposure to the cold. He also describes how he discovers the monster in Victor's cabin, grieving for the loss and damage he has brought about. The monster tells Walton of its anguish before leaping back onto the ice and vanishing into the Arctic night, seemingly with the intention of taking its own life.